And we're recording, so Mike, feel free.
Okay, well, welcome everyone to our monthly content webinar. And today we're really excited to have Dara Levy from Facebook joining us today. And so without further ado, Dara, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mike. Hey, everyone. As Mike just said, I'm Dara Levy. I'm a partner manager at Facebook, working primarily with local news organizations. I'm coming up on about 2 years at Facebook, and I'm based in New York, but I'm originally from Westfield, New Jersey. So I'm not sure if anyone from the Westfield Tap Into page is on, but you guys are pretty prominent in the community. I read your stories sometimes, and I get them sent to me from my mom all the time too. So, and I've been working with Mike now for probably close to a year, 6 months, on just ways that we can sort of just improve the Tap Into presence across Facebook overall. I should also say I'm without doggy childcare today. So if at any point you hear like barking or I don't know, anything could happen. I have a puppy, and hopefully he stays on his best behavior. Okay, so looks like we have a jam-packed agenda, but don't worry, it's not as dense as it looks like. The objective for today is really to understand the principles of Facebook algorithms and how newsfeed and suggestions work on Facebook, so that you can then improve your distribution and your engagement with your audiences. And I'll have lots of best practices and tips and tricks along the way. And we'll be sure to save plenty of time for questions too. And I'll take all questions at the end. So kind of the basic principle of how newsfeed distribution works on Facebook is this algorithm right here. So anytime someone opens Facebook, either on their desktop or their phone, we're looking at an inventory of thousands of possible posts that they could be seeing from their friends and their family, pages that they follow, groups that they're a part of. There's a lot of different things there. So in order to determine the rank and the order of how those things are going to appear for any individual user, we look at a bunch of different signals, thousands of signals actually, but a lot of those are getting at things like who posted the story, like is it relevant to me? Is it a close friend of mine? Is it my mom? Was it posted today so that I should definitely see it versus a week ago? Is it content similar to things that I've shared before, or things that I've expressed an interest in, things like that. Based on all of those signals, we make a prediction of how likely that user is to then engage with that piece of content. And with those predictions, we calculate a relevance score for all of these pieces of content. And that relevance score is basically what ranks the order in which your posts are going to appear in someone's newsfeed. As you likely know, there's so much inventory on Facebook, and some of you might be posting a dozen or even more times per day. It's unlikely that all of your followers are going to be seeing 100% of the posts that you create just due to all of this. So it's important to understand this so that you can hopefully get your content in front of as many people as possible. So just an example of how that works. You post an article about, let's say, a football game in your community. We're putting that in the inventory of all of the other stories about other things and just regular posts and photos for an individual user. Looking at those signals, so for me, like, have I read a bunch of posts from your outlet before? Have I engaged with a lot of stories about Facebook? About football. Maybe I posted about football myself, anything like that. So we make a prediction about how likely I am to engage with that based on other things that I have done before, other behaviors I've taken, whether exactly similar to that or something that might just indicate that behavior, and then give it a score. So the people that we feel are most likely to resonate with that football content are most likely to see those posts. So I'm going to talk about this a lot throughout the presentation, but this is all just good reason why you should really understand your audience, the types of things that resonate with them, the types of topics that you're posting about that maybe perform the best, or even just the ways that you're framing that content to basically get it in front of even more people. So that I just explained is all sort of speaking to just the normal newsfeed, mostly people who are already connected to your page, so your existing followers and how high in their newsfeed they're going to see your posts. Another element to this is suggested posts. So there's a number of different surfaces in Facebook where we suggest posts to users, whether they're following your page or not. This is really helpful for finding new audiences and reaching people who aren't already aware of your brand or aren't already following you. So suggested posts, they can appear just in the regular newsfeed. You might experience it yourself. Sometimes we might just show you an article or a video and say that it's just something that we thought you might be interested in, even if you're not sure what that page is because you're not already following it. Maybe we'll tell you that 3 of your friends liked this article from Tap Into, whatever it may be. There are other surfaces within Facebook where this happens. So if you're posting video, the watch tab where all Facebook video lives is also like a suggested post, like a place where suggested posts can happen, as well as Facebook News, which is our dedicated tab for news on Facebook. And there's a local section where your posts are eligible to appear there too. So this sort of same framework works for any suggested surface within Facebook. When we're looking at what posts to suggest, sorry, I'm just trying to minimize the video box because it's covering my screen, but that's okay. When we're looking at suggested posts, we're looking at a bunch of different things. So one of those is the content fresh? So of course, is it recent? Is it resonating with people? Including maybe, is it something that might be new to this individual user? So while we are looking at things like that they're interested in, we're also trying to mix up the different sources that they're seeing and find things that might maybe like complete their whole Facebook experience, whether or not it's something that they've indicated like a direct interest in. We do try to publish a variety of content. So while things like your page size might factor in just a little bit here, it's really not the main focus. We are really looking just at a variety of publishers and a variety of content to help users discover new posts, whether it is something that they're already following or not. And then quality. So I will talk about this a little bit more later. I have a couple slides on this, but we really try to reduce any problematic or harmful content on Facebook or anything that goes against our community standards. I don't think you guys are engaging in anything like that, but just important to note. But we're also looking at things like surveys when users tell us how helpful or how informative a piece of content was to them. We're also looking at things like transparent authorship. So for example, we will downrank links from a news outlet if we can't find any sort of bylines or editorial info or any sort of authorship as to how those come to be. Again, not something you guys have to worry about, but just so you know, these are the sort of things that kind of factor into that quality bucket. And then again, that audience is seeing things that relate to them directly or sort of maybe secondhand indirectly based on topics that they've expressed interest in or have posted about before. And then location is really, really key here. So we are trying to show users things that relate to their local community. When we surveyed users in the past, they say that local news is really important to them on Facebook and trying to get that authoritative info about their community. Particularly where this comes in handy also is within the Facebook News tab. There is a local section within Facebook News. If you haven't checked it out, you should. And users can configure their settings there and see different posts from publishers in their community, including from Tap Into. So all that's great, but it might sound like maybe it's a little bit out of your control, sort of luck of the draw. I hear often that it sort of feels like a black box where people don't really know what to do with that information. So here are some suggestions of how you can actually optimize your content to appear in suggested posts and just sort of in general on Facebook. Big thing, just making sure that all of your content is meeting our integrity standards. I'm not too concerned about any of your pages doing this, but this is things like misinformation, glorifying violence, using IP that you don't have the permission to actually use. Creating content that's focused on key topics for your brand and that's resonating with your audience. This is kind of the crux of everything here. You want to make sure that you're posting things that that your audience is going to want to engage with, talk about, share, click on, etc. Of course, you're a news publisher. You're going to publish things that are, the most important news items, whether or not there's an indication that your audience is necessarily passionate about it. But there are still ways to do this where you can sort of tap into people's, no pun intended, but tap into people's interests and likes, regardless of what the topic is. So some things are just making sure that you're using those hashtags, that you're using descriptions. It's easy to just sort of copy and paste like a headline into your share copy, but making sure that you're really trying to use all of those given features in a post so that we can try to serve it to anyone who that might be interesting for. But where this really comes into play is with your insights and with Creator Studio, where you can identify what types of things are performing best for you and try to lean into that a little bit more. I'm going to talk about this more later too, don't worry, because it's really important. Keeping to a regular publishing schedule so that you have a regular stream of content. It says here that we only publish content within the last 30 days or so. Of course, you guys are publishing all the time, so that isn't too much of a concern, but you do want to make sure that you are publishing fairly regularly throughout the day during regular waking hours, 7 days a week. There's a place in Creator Studio Insights where you can dig into this a little bit further, which I'll show you in a few minutes also, because it is just important that for your connected followers, essentially anytime that they open Facebook, you want to make sure that there's something fresh for them to look at, ideally, and not get too stale or be posting things at times when your followers might not be online. This talks about video, but basically using video to try to reach new audiences, also promote your brand. Generally, we see that slightly longer video, like around 3 minutes or longer, performs better on Facebook, but short video is still a really good way to bring in new followers, to sort of promote things, introduce yourself, that sort of thing. But really what I want to use this to talk about is just kind of like post variety in general. So whether you're doing video or not, we see that pages that are posting a variety of content tend to perform better. So that's a mix of links and photos, videos when possible, really leveraging everything that Facebook has to offer. We also really recommend just a multi-surface approach. So in addition to just posting links to your own page, I know some of you have like a good group strategy, but you want to be thinking about all those different things. So ideally posting to your page, posting to groups, leveraging stories, videos when possible, maybe Instagram. I know it's a lot to think about, but to the extent that you can, really thinking about that kind of 360 view, so that no matter where a user is on Facebook, you're able to reach them. Also, just the more that a user is engaging with your content, the more likely they are to continue to see things from you. So for example, if you're posting a Facebook story and I'm a user and I'm watching your Facebook story every single day, that tells Facebook that I really, really care about your brand. I want to see more things from you. And then your feed posts are more likely to also surface in my feed. So all of that is kind of working together. So just whether you're doing video or not, just important to think about a lot of different things here. And I'll have some tips a little bit later about ways to do that. So community standards, as I mentioned earlier, community standards are really, really important to us in determining what content to suggest to users on Facebook and what content to promote, and how to, and also downranking things in newsfeed if they don't meet these, and or also removing them from the platform if they're really, really violating. Again, not too worried about any of you guys here, but just want to go through this. So you can find more on our website, but basically making sure that you're not doing anything illegal or using like IP that doesn't belong to you. Just having meaningful interaction, so not like engagement bait where you're telling people necessarily to share or to comment on a post, posting respectfully, not glorifying things like violence or self-harm. Of course, we understand that certain events are newsworthy, even if they are like violent or graphic in terms of the content, but just making sure that you're framing them in a way that is appropriate. So these are some things that when particularly extreme could actually be removed from the platform. But we also look at a bunch of signals that just reduce problematic content, so might not necessarily be removed, but could just see a reduced distribution. So you definitely want to avoid anything like these examples here. We have a very robust third-party fact-checking program that aims to reduce misinformation on Facebook. So if hopefully that hasn't happened to you, if it does, there's a whole appeal process that you can go through, but it's really important to us that Facebook is just a source of accurate, authoritative information. We reduce things like click gap, which is when kind of like out of nowhere, like a new website just has an insane amount of like Facebook traffic. Sorry, that's very loud. My dog has, give me 1 second. Maybe not. Things like clickbait. So I mean, we all know what clickbaity headlines are, but just making sure that your headlines are clear and accurate. Not using engagement bait, which I mentioned earlier, is telling people to comment or share a post directly. Of course, you want to foster engagement, but in a way that isn't so direct. So we have examples of that on our website too that I can also send along if that's helpful. But it's anything that's like really overt, like share this post if you are feeling happy this Monday, you know, things like that. I think you guys all know enough about that though. Avoiding sensationalized health and wellness content. This is really important to us. But again, any news publisher should probably not be too concerned about this. And then just limiting low originality and low quality web experiences. So those are things like if you're linking to a website with 1 million pop-ups or you're an aggregator. All right, so those were basically all of the things that we look for in determining what posts to promote or not in Facebook. So how do you actually understand your audience and understand your posts to know how you can sort of do better in terms of Facebook distribution? So there are a number of different insights tools within Facebook. You might use Page Insights already. You might use Creator Studio. We have a few other things like CrowdTangle as well. For purposes of this, I'm going to focus on Creator Studio just because parts of it are much newer for people. And it's definitely where we're sort of like building it out the most. So if you're more familiar with Page Insights, I'd say like most of the newer features on Facebook are being developed in Creator Studio. And they are a little bit more robust and a little bit more user-friendly, I think, than what you'll find in Page Insights. I'm really excited about this because Creator Studio previously was really more of a video focused platform. You would use your Page Insights for just basic, link posts and anything else. And Creator Studio was really only helpful if you were publishing a lot of videos. We're changing that, which is great. So there are a lot of new tools within there today that apply to any kind of page on Facebook, regardless of the type of content that you're posting. And we're going to be doing even more of that. So it's important to make sure you're familiar with Creator Studio. If you haven't already used it, this is where you can find it. There's also an app. Creator Studio does a bunch of different things. So you can use it to schedule posts in advance. You can use it to manage your Instagram page also. So you don't have to be posting from your phone. You can post from desktop. But there's so much there that I'm just going to be focusing on Creator Studio Insights, which are where you can do things like view your performance, learn more about your audience, see your follower growth over time. And if you are posting video, there's some other insights that you can see there too. So kind of the center of all of Creator Studio is what we call the content library. It's probably going to be the first thing that you see when you open Creator Studio. And you'll see all of your posts here with a lot of different metrics about them. When they're published, what state they're in, if they're still a draft post, but also things like their reach, their distribution, their engagement, how many shares they got, etc. It's really helpful to sort of like benchmark your typical page performance, know what's normal to you, which can take some time or some, a deeper dive. But once you do that and sort of know like what is normal or what's a benchmark for your page, you can see the kinds of things that are really taking off, or perhaps the things that aren't doing as well. Sometimes that might just be due to like a little bit of luck of the draw. Sometimes it's just a particular topic that your audience might not be crazy about. but a lot of times there are ways to sort of find patterns there and determine what's going to help you more in the future. So sometimes maybe it's like certain keywords that you're using in the headline, longer versus shorter headlines, the types of images that you're using, sort of like how much you're sharing in the link preview, all sorts of things like that. Unfortunately, there's not one main answer here in terms of like the length of headline that does best, or what time of day you posted it. If there was, everyone would be doing it. I wouldn't have a job. But it's pretty unique to each individual page. But if you can try to find patterns here and understand what does best for your page and lean into that a little bit more, it should help with their distribution things. So another really helpful tool within Creator Studio is your audience insights. You'll find this by going to insights and then page and then audience. It's pretty easy to navigate to though within Creator Studio. And you can see a lot of different information about your Facebook audience here. So things like the age and gender of your followers. And if you click into these, you can see a little bit more information as well. You probably won't be too surprised with the location that you're finding your followers from, but you can check the location here, primary language, and kind of more importantly, their interests. So again, like with that football example sort of at the top, if you see that those sorts of things are your followers are really interested in, maybe when determining like what you're going to be posting to Facebook on a given day, out of your available inventory, you want to really focus on those sorts of posts. Or maybe you want to save that as like an evergreen post also and post it when it comes out, and then also save that story that your audience is really interested in as well and post it like on the weekend too. If you're posting video, you'll also have access to this, which is going to show you what other pages your audience likes and what other videos your video viewers are watching. Again, just really helpful to try to find like some patterns here. And if there's anything that these other pages are doing that you might be able to leverage with your own audience. This, I think, if you're not on mute, if you wouldn't mind muting, that would be great. There's a little bit of feedback. I personally think this is sort of one of the most underrated metrics that we have within Facebook. So this is when your followers are online. This is still within that audience section if you just keep scrolling down. And you can see the time of day and the days of the week that most of your audience is online. What we typically see for most pages is that your audience is online basically from around like 7 or 8 a.m. to 8 or 9 p.m., 7 days a week. Definitely check this out though, because that isn't always the case, but it generally is so. The reason why I say that is, most of us are trying to work a Monday through Friday work week. But it's important to remember that your audience is kind of always online when they're awake. So to try to have like a regular stream of content that's going to be coming out 7 days a week. Evergreen content or reposted links are totally fine to share sometimes. So you might want to do like in case you missed it on the weekend, if you don't have fresh news stories, or just share things that maybe weren't as timely and are still relevant. Because sometimes what we see when we're looking at like post volume is a page will be posting like 20 times a day, Monday through Friday, and then all of a sudden drop off on Saturdays and Sundays. Totally makes sense. But when your audience is on Facebook, they aren't necessarily thinking about it as like the weekend versus the weekdays. So you want to make sure that whenever they're on Facebook, that there's something fresh and new for them to be seeing and engaging with. And then we have performance insights, which is also really helpful. The navigation for this has changed a little bit recently. So actually the screenshot that you're seeing here isn't totally accurate, but I have on the bottom here how you'll actually navigate to it. So if you're just looking for kind of your regular page post, you'll go to Creator Studio, Insights, and then Pages, and then Overview. For videos, there's a different video section. But this also just gives you one big overview in a given time period of your reach, your engagement, net followers. Always just healthy to kind of like take a peek at this maybe like once a week and just make sure that there isn't anything funky going on. Or maybe if you have like a particularly amazing week, to try to dig into that a little bit further too, and see maybe what you might have done differently that led to that so that you can do more of it in the future. The fluctuations are normal across Facebook in terms of engagement and reach and followers and all this. Just want to say that. So, minor fluctuations up and down, totally to be expected. Sometimes we also do see pretty big positive fluctuations when a page is being featured in those suggested posts that I talked about earlier. So, if your page is being recommended to a lot of people who don't already follow you, you might see a really big bump one week in new follower growth or engagement or clicks to your site. And that's awesome. Obviously, that's what we all want. But it means that, in times when you aren't being suggested to new followers due to, thousands of different factors, you might just see like a slight decline week to week coming down from that a little bit. But that's all to be expected. Again, it's normal, and just the bumps that you might get from those suggested services are still awesome. That's part of why you might see some of that like up and down from time to time. All right. So I mentioned earlier also that something we really recommend is a multi-platform approach, multi-surface within Facebook, and then also just a lot of different variety of post content. Not everyone has the bandwidth or the equipment or the time and the resources to create videos. Some of you are engaging in groups. That's awesome too. But a little bit more of a lightweight way to do this also is through stories. So stories are a really engaging tool within both Facebook and Instagram. These numbers are actually a little bit outdated. They're even stronger now. But we just see a ton of engagement with stories. They're also really great for brand awareness. And again, like I was talking about, it kind of kicks off that flywheel of where people are just more likely to see your stuff overall. So if we see that someone's like watching your story every day, you're a lot more likely to reach them in other places across Facebook too, and have your post shown to them in newsfeed. The reason why I like stories though is because they can just be very like candid and simple and authentic. I think a lot of people initially might think that if you're a page on Facebook or Instagram, that everything that you're posting needs to be like produced and really clean and have like graphic design or things like that. But if you think about most users on Facebook or Instagram, most of the people that they're following are their friends and their family. They're people that they know that don't have access to any of that fancy stuff. So what people are looking for, especially in stories, is just a really authentic experience. It doesn't need to be anything highly produced. Anything that's just leveraging the tools built right into stories, like GIFs and stickers and polls and all of that is a really great way to use them, and pretty easy to just start doing, or using like photos that you already have from your site or from an event or anything like that. Here's a great example from Now This News that just shows sort of a narrative of how a whole story comes together. So in this case, Lucy Biggers does a whole variety of, she's on camera covering an event, then she's showing the event, then she's showing like still images and doing polls and all sorts of things like that. This is great, even if you can only do still images that you just like have on hand, that's fine too. You don't always have to be talking to camera if you're not comfortable with that. She's using a lot of short copy throughout. While a lot of people watch stories with sound on, not everyone is. So having the text on screen is really, really great. I also just want to point out that everything that she's using here is built right into the app.
Half an hour Roblox then until I finish up. Now, okay. Yeah. Okay. Good. Is that good? Would you like that? Yeah, that's fine. Okay.
If you can just mute whoever's talking. Thanks.
Great. So everything that she's using here is built right into the stories creation experience. Nothing fancy. These are just stickers and basically text that's very easy to create. And she is leveraging all of this. So you'll see that they are tagging her in that first slide, and she's using a GIF or a GIF and text. She's using a poll. She's using, lots of it's simple animation, and it's all just right there. So if you decide to do stories, definitely embrace all of this. It really helps. And as much as you can, really just involving your audience by doing things like asking them questions. We see that a lot of stories generate direct messages in response or other sorts of responses and for stories, which are really just helpful in building that relationship with your audience. Give me a sec. Here we go. If you're posting stories to your Instagram page, it's really easy to also just cross post those to your Facebook page as well. In your Instagram stories, you can turn on automatic cross posting, where everything that you post to your Instagram story will automatically cross post to Facebook, or you can just you can choose to do it manually. We find that most people or most pages audiences on Instagram and Facebook actually look pretty different from each other. So you don't have to worry about everyone seeing the same piece of content twice, but you're already creating it. So you might as well kind of get twice the use out of it. You can also originate stories just in Facebook. You can create them in the Facebook app just for Facebook, but the cross-posting piece doesn't work in reverse. So you can cross-post from Instagram to Facebook, but not from Facebook. From Instagram to Facebook, but not from Facebook to Instagram. But I just really like stories because they are a place to really just be experimental. Again, doesn't have to be anything fancy. They expire in 24 hours. So it's a great place to try a bunch of things and see what sticks. They're a really great place also for like repeatable franchises and series. And there's just a lot of different things you can do there. Some of the things I've seen recently are like highlights of, restaurants in your community that have really great outdoor dining setups, or little guides about where to get vaccinated and how to get vaccinated. You can save your stories too as highlights, so that if you're doing it sort of in a more guide-like format, people can refer back to them, and it can be really helpful for people. All right, so this is sort of the TLDR of everything I talked about today. But if I had to really summarize how to drive meaningful interactions and build your engagement with your audience and improve your distribution on Facebook, you want to start out by just posting content that your audience is going to engage with and engaging with them. So encouraging authentic shares and engagement, again, not clickbait and not engagement bait, but just posting content that is resonating with them. Sometimes also like responding to them in the comments, we see does really well for pages, and makes readers feel like they are being seen and connected with. Using all of those different features that you have available to you. So things like hashtags, location tags, using stories and or groups and or video to the extent that you can, having clear descriptions. So it's like really a full package if you think about it, with your headline and your photo and your description. And also helps you appear in things like Facebook search for people who are finding you that way. Having a really consistent voice and brand, and make sure you have a consistent schedule as well. Again, so that there's always something kind of fresh for people to be seeing. Quality is really important. I mean, not in terms of our community standards, but also things like, high quality images and clear headlines, and nothing that, feels spammy or clickbaity in any way. Experimenting with a lot of things, particularly when it comes to things like stories and video. Those are a great place to experiment, but even with your regular posts, experimenting is great. And then just monitoring your insights really closely to see how those things are doing. You might try an experiment that maybe your audience doesn't love, but maybe it takes off and you can create a recurring franchise out of it. And then just using your insights, checking your insights regularly to see what's performing best, so that you can continue to create great, authentic, original content with that. So I know that was a lot, but happy to take questions now. We have a good amount of time, I think.
This has been great, Dara. I guess one question before we open up the floor to everybody was, can you talk a little bit more about hashtags? Because I know a while back, hashtags were for Twitter, but can you talk about them being used on Facebook and whether you think they're worth the time for people to do, and any hints or suggestions you have about using hashtags on Facebook?
Yeah, you definitely don't need to be using them on every post. What hashtags are going to help most with is those suggested posts and with search. So for audiences who are just using the Facebook search box to find things about a topic in their community, maybe something about COVID, leveraging those hashtags is going to just help your content actually be discovered there, and also indicates to our recommendation algorithms what your content is about, so that we can serve it to the right people. But again, doesn't need to be on every kind of post, but maybe one where you think that a broader audience might find it helpful. whenever using hashtags on Instagram and Facebook, the sweet spot is generally around 3 to 5, no more than that. It doesn't really hurt to go beyond that, but we just find that after 3 or 5 hashtags on a given post, it doesn't really, there's no benefit beyond that. So you don't have to go crazy figuring out like 20 hashtags to include. But yeah, primarily with just recommendations and search, it can be helpful.
Yeah, thank you. And I know there's a couple questions in chat, and then we can see who else might have some questions. I do have access to the chat so you can see what's been asked.
I think so. Yes. Okay. Awesome. Oh, hi, Matt from Westfield. Who is the arbiter of misinformation? So we have, I can send more information about this afterwards. We work with a number of global and national fact-checking organizations that are, reputable and recognized. We list out who they are. I think there's about a dozen now in the US, and they, any content that might be misinformation or is flagged by a user as being misinformation is put into a queue for them. They then review it according to a bunch of different standards. And you would be notified if they determine that content to be misinformation with very clear info about how you would go about appealing that or why it was determined to be misinformation or anything like that. But it involves like essentially sending a form email to those organizations. They're very helpful and responsive. And yeah, but we lay out all this out on our website, so I can send it to Mike to distribute to all of you guys too. The engagement stats seem to only relate to posted videos. Okay, I think that's talking about like Creator Studio content library stuff. So it was previously mostly about video. Now you should be able to see in your content library, and the screenshot that I had might have been outdated, but you should now be able to see in your content library information about your reach, your shares, your comments, your likes, etc., about any kind of post that you're posting to your page, whether it's a video or not.
This is Jenny Derricks. That was my question. I'm in on a different computer. I'm in it right now, and I have 3 different pages. One has the new Creator Studio, and the other 2 only have the old style. In the old style, I can clearly see engagement by time, by day of week, and all of that information that you referenced. In Creator Studio, I don't. It just has, the graphic looks similar to what you were posting, but it only relates to video. So maybe there's a new version, or I don't have the updated version, but I only get what they send me.
That's interesting. Yeah, the new version is the one that should be including everything. I will get your contact information, if that's okay, maybe from Mike after this, and we can connect on that and see what might be up. Occasionally, when things are new, like the new Creator Studio features are, we have some holdout groups where people, like a limited audience, might not have that new feature yet. So that could be what's happening there. And if so, we can get that fixed.
Thank
Dara,
you.
is there like a email or something that we can sign up for to know when there's updates to the platform?
Yeah, what I would recommend most is the Facebook Journalism Project. If you go to facebookjournalismproject.com, they have a newsletter that comes out. I think it's either every week or every other week, that has any major platform updates, also things like case studies. I also sometimes send out some updates that we can make sure get distributed to you guys. That's the best place to see that. We also, within Creator Studio, actually right up at the top, is an area where you would see any big announcements. So if there's like a new feature that your page is eligible for, you would also see a notice in Creator Studio, and you should be getting like a regular like notification icon about it as well. But I definitely recommend signing up for that newsletter for everyone. That's where you'll see any big announcements.
Cool, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, I think there's another question in chat for you, Dara.
Interesting. Also, get in touch with me, I guess through Mike, if that's easiest. Mike, does that work?
Yeah, that's fine.
That sounds like that might be a bug.
Yeah, Shannon, just reach out to me, and then I'll forward it to Dara so she can get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Just
Sure.
include the link to your page and any like screenshots or any other info that you can provide about that.
All right, perfect.
Yeah. And by the way, if people would like, they can unmute themselves and ask a question, or you can ask it in chat. So open up the floor to anybody.
Hi, Dara. This is Scott.
Hey.
And in my articles, I do a lot of linking of other companies I mentioned, charities, etc. How important is that? How much weight does that Facebook put on linking?
Just so I'm clear, is the linking in your Facebook post?
It's when I write the article, I'll if I mention a company, I'll just link that within the article.
Got it. To be honest, I'm not sure how much, if at all, we're weighting those things. I don't think like we're doing that much of like a deep scan of the article itself that those things that you're linking out would change anything either for or like against you. What definitely does help though, in moderation, is if your post is about like an organization or a brand that has a Facebook page of its own, tagging that page when you share the post on Facebook, so that any people that are like a fan of that other page, again, are then more likely to have your content recommended to them.
And Dara, I think that's a really important point, because I see a lot of times where people are not tagging groups and stuff that they're writing about. So and can you talk a little bit more about how that impacts Facebook when they see news sites doing that, tagging groups that they're writing about?
Yeah, I mean, so any of those tools that you have to add to a post, whether it's like a hashtag or tagging a page, including making sure like the image is appearing when you're sharing your link, there's any text that you're including there, all of those things are contributing to those signals that I was talking about up at the top. And anything that you're doing is basically like providing some information that's going to tell us how relevant that is to that user. Of course, you can just like write it out in plain text, but that's a little bit harder for us to know like who you're talking about or who cares about this particular like I don't know, like local restaurant. But if you tag that local restaurant and we know exactly what that restaurant is, and we know that 1,000 people that follow your page are also following that restaurant on Facebook, we're going to be a lot more likely to know that the fans of that restaurant want to see the story about the restaurant too, probably. So basically, like as many pieces of information that you can give us about a given post, the more likely it is to help you with distribution.
This is Matt from Tap into Westfield. I've seen some posts have a tag that say like a COVID update. Is this something that's helpful? And if so, how do we do that?
So that was a tool that was rolled out, I guess, almost a year ago now, primarily for small businesses, so that they could be informing their community about like changes in opening hours and things like that, and like COVID protocols. It technically is not available to publishers, so if you have access to it, well, I can't stop you from using it, but you might not have access to it. And if you don't, unfortunately, I can't do anything about that. If you've seen it, it's probably just for other businesses.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other
Hi,
Dara?
yeah, this is Aaliyah in Maplewood, South Orange. Of course, now my question just went right out of my head. Oh, how is there a way that we would know if we have been a suggested post?
Great question. The short answer, unfortunately, right now is no. If it's a video that has been suggested, there is a feature right now in Creator Studio where you can see essentially how people found that video. So you'll see like a pie chart, and it talks about whether the people that looked at that video were existing followers of yours, like friends of them who saw it as the result of a share, or people who saw it because it was suggested to them. We don't have that equivalent for regular posts yet, although there's a lot of work being done in Creator Studio to kind of create parity between video metrics and link metrics. So that should hopefully come soon. Particularly though, when it comes to Facebook News or the news tab, where your posts should hopefully be appearing sometimes in the local tab. We do have insights in the works specifically for Facebook News, where you would be able to see which of your posts are appearing in Facebook News and how many people saw them as a result of appearing there. That's all still in testing. So more to come there, but it's something that we understand is really important to publishers. It's just it doesn't exist yet, but there's a lot of work being done around it.
This is Matt again. You had discussed, posting to Instagram from, or Facebook from Instagram, Instagram from Facebook. You had discussed the story specifically. If we just want to post like a photo and we're on the Facebook platform, is there a way to do that to Instagram, and how do we get there?
No, so most of the cross-posting can only happen from Instagram to Facebook, not in reverse. So if it's something that you first posted to Instagram, you can share it to your Facebook page, either directly in the app, or I believe you can do this from Creator Studio as well. I have to double check. Making a note of that. But if you haven't checked it out, you can basically anything that you would want to do in Instagram, with the exception of stories, you can do from Creator Studio as well. So at the top of Creator Studio, there's an icon for Facebook and an icon for Instagram. And if you toggle over to the Instagram side, you can do things like schedule posts in advance. You can look at some Instagram insights. This is also really helpful if you have a bunch of different people managing your Instagram account, or if you don't want to be logged into your Instagram on your personal phone. If you're an admin of the Facebook page and the Facebook and the Instagram page are linked, you can do most of that Instagram management from your desktop too.
Hi, this is Aaliyah again. I have one other Instagram question, and it's an Instagram support question. The editor before me created an Instagram page, but it's an email. The login is an email she doesn't even use anymore, and a password that is completely unknown to everyone in the world. So we've tried to reach out to Instagram support, but gotten no answer because we don't know the login, but we want that name. Mm-hmm. How is it possible to get that name? Our name.
Send an email to Mike, who can forward it along to me. There's a couple different options. So if you have any info about the page, like if you know what that email, sorry, I'm going to sneeze. Maybe not. If you know what that email address might have been, we can fix that. If you have no idea what like the email address even is, there's other avenues basically that involve just sort of proving your ownership of the account that are a little bit more involved, but
great.
Yeah, we can fix that.
Great, thank you.
Yep. There's one more option actually also, that if we see that an account has been dormant for like a long period of time, including on the back end, like no one has attempted to log into that account or anything like that, we can also sometimes transfer a username over. So like if you have another account that you're using, we can just, the old username appears to be dead, we can just transfer that old username over to an existing.
Yeah, I mean, no one's logged into it except me trying to. All right, thanks.
Yeah, just send along an email with whatever info you have about it.
Okay.
Anyone else have any other questions?
I do have one other question. This is Matt. I think you addressed this a little bit, but is there any such thing as too many posts in one day? And how do we know when we're at that point?
Yeah, so this is one of those tricky things where it's, again, it's like kind of unique to every single page. Some pages are posting, like 5 times a day, and they find that when they increase that, maybe their engagement starts to go down a little bit. Others are posting 20 times a day, and their reach and their engagement like can basically handle that and stays consistent if they're posting 20 times a day. What I recommend doing, again, and I know this is sort of like a non-answer answer, is benchmarking like what you're doing now and what seems to be working, and experimenting consistently for like a week or two by either turning that up a little bit or even dialing it back a tiny bit, and seeing if that has any noticeable difference. If you have the content to post and you're able to do more of it, definitely do. But sometimes there's a point for pages where they start to see just some like negative ramifications. Usually nothing too dramatic, but just a good thing to keep an eye on. And if you do find that like you've almost too much content and that your engagement is starting to go down, or your reach is going down by posting too much, those are good things maybe to save for like the weekends, if they are things that could last longer, or maybe to promote in your stories instead. But again, just something to kind of keep a close eye on and experiment with a little bit.
Thank you.
Awesome. Anyone else have any other questions?
It's Jenny Derricks again. You had said earlier that Insta can only push to Facebook. It can't go the other way, but I'm looking at the page right now and it has directions for how to get Facebook to push to Insta. And it needs admin or editor permission to do it, but it says that you can do it. So has something changed? Is my page?
I misspoke a bit. You should be able to share from your Facebook page to your Instagram account, but that automatic cross posting that I was talking about does only work from Instagram to Facebook. The one thing I would caution, and it doesn't work with stories either. You can't share a story from Facebook to Instagram, but the one thing I would caution there is there are certain like formats that don't render well on Instagram. So if you're posting like a regular link post to your Facebook page, just remember that link isn't actually going to be clickable in the Instagram text. So generally you want to think about Instagram as like being a bit more visual, and like focusing on like the photo there, and including information in the caption, but just knowing that like a link is just going to be like dead, unclickable text. Whereas on Facebook, you definitely want to be making sure that you have like a clickable link there. So if you are sharing from Instagram to Facebook, making sure that you are like adding that link back in to try to take advantage of that reach.
Thanks. That helps. It would be helpful to be able to have it linked. Thanks.
Yeah, I also wish that we could click on links from Instagram, and I don't actually know what the timeline is or anything around that. I know it is feedback that's been shared with the Instagram team for many years.
Well, any push is a time saver. So even if it's not a clickable, at least it gets it out there. So I appreciate that. Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, well, I guess Mike is going to distribute this recording. I'll send over some follow-up links as well about like our community standards, about our third-party fact-checking program. And if you have any like bugs or account issues or anything like that, get in touch with Mike, who can get them over to me. Thank you all so much.